It's Monday, August 31st, 2020. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are talking about biometrics. It's a tough time right now because right around now, I mean, year by year, it all varies a little bit. We'd either be in Seattle, about to fly to Seattle, like this is the PAX time.
It's pretty rare you're going to get a Geek Nights episode on August 31st.
Right? Like
probably maybe next year, but probably not the year after, hopefully.
This is when like all my calendar invites that I set to myself for like go to PAX, do things, prepare slides, like they're all popping up in my feed. Up until this point, the quarantine, for all the trouble, you know, it's not the best time. Like I'd rather not have to be quarantined, but we haven't actually missed that many major conventions or events because the summer is actually usually kind of our downtime. But we're now hitting the period where we would normally go to a major convention every month for like 5 months in a row, sometimes multiple in a month. And this is the point where I'm actually going to not have that happen for the first time in, gosh, since 2008.
Yeah, we've pretty much been doing the same, not daily routine has changed and things like that, obviously, but our annual schedule, zoomed out, the macro schedule has been pretty much the same for about 10 years.
Yep.
Until now, so there you go.
Yep. I had a dream the other night where I was just like, we were on our way to PAX West, and then I was like, oh shit, what hotel are we in? And I couldn't remember, and I didn't know what hotel we'd booked because we don't have a hotel. We're not going to PAX West. I was like, are we in the Sheraton or the Red Lion? Red Lion doesn't even exist anymore. What's going on?
Motif. We're in the one that has the new PAX tabletop in it.
That's where we usually are.
That's what. Well, 1 year we've been in it. Maybe.
Yep. That's where we would probably be again.
Probably, yes.
Yeah, so now it's the weird time where there are things I'm missing that I would normally be doing that are big things that are like milestones of the year. PAX always ends summer for me, and now there's no PAX. So either summer's going to go on forever, which I'll take that.
Okay. Yeah, but, it's just people have to get ready. I mean, even though it's been many months already, I think, it's like, okay, everything's different now. People have to accept that, like, on the other side is not going to be going back to what you had before. I guarantee
not for a long time, at least.
I don't know. There isn't.
Well, some things will probably be able to return to what they were.
Right, but the point is that it's not like, let's say we get past the virus and get past fascism somehow in 2021.
Oh, yeah, it's not like, everything's fixed.
2022 is not going to suddenly look like 2018
no.
or 2014 or, any of the years of the past 10 years, right? It's going to be a different look, right? You don't go get a makeover and come out. It's like, oh, I'm getting a makeover right now, looking bad, looking good, changing things up. Whatever. You don't come out on the other side looking exactly the same as you went in. Right? It's like, that doesn't happen.
Yep. Some things will come back.
Whatever your life situation is, accept that now.
Yep. Especially because there's a long haul in the U.S. So even like vaccines and things, like there aren't going to be a lot of cons next year, if any.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see how it all goes. But there is a lot of tech news, and we got to keep milking this Apple story because it's just growing and growing, and stuff keeps happening in it.
So the first thing I got to say about the Apple story is obviously this brewing was sort of started at that congressional hearing and only went up since, right? And I got to say, Apple is obviously, none of the companies involved here are good, by the way.
Yeah, nobody's like clearly the right one here.
This is a bad guy battle here, right? This is like, Dr. Doom and, Lex Luthor punching it out. But the point is that, of all those 4 companies that were at that hearing, right? Your Google, your Facebook, right? Your Amazon, and your Apple, right? Apple is getting the most blows here in the immediate aftermath, right? And why is that? Number one, Apple has the most money of all those companies.
Yep.
What's Apple's, I think, has the biggest market cap ever in history of any company, some $1 trillion.
Yeah,
whatever.
The entire U.S. tech sector is bigger than many global regional economies right now, which let's not get into how the stock market doesn't reflect reality. But anyway, Apple's got a lot of wealth and capital.
Apple is big, right? And also, right, Apple is philosophically, at least on paper, right, the enemy of those other three companies, right? If you look at the four companies in the box, right, Apple is the one where the customer is the customer, right?
Yep. Which doesn't always mean you're the right good guy. Like Amazon treats the customer on a pedestal, yet
right,
Amazon does a lot of bad.
Right. So on Google and Facebook, the customer is the product, right? On Amazon, the customer is sort of the customer, right? But what Amazon does is they exploit others in service of the customer while also taking the customer's data to help it better exploit others. Apple, right, serves the customer, but sees itself as a luxury service. So who do they exploit? Also the customer by making them pay. They make everyone they work with pay, right? It's like, instead of, taking your data and selling it or spying on you or any of those things, right? We're just going to make everyone pay. Developers pay, customers overpay for RAM, everyone pay money, right? And, we'll treat the customer nicely, but they don't treat anyone else nicely, just the customer.
Yep.
Right? So because of that, right, that aligns the Googles and Facebooks of the world, against Apple, right? Especially since they have to operate on Apple's platform, right?
Yep. So like, even though Apple's platform is not the majority, is not a monopoly, there are other platforms for smartphones and tablets and everything, but Apple basically has complete control over people who are fully into their ecosystem. And the reality of the world is it's not easy for most people to switch ecosystems.
No. But if you think about it, right, Apple doesn't depend on Amazon. All right, it's like they might use some Oz computers or Google Cloud Compute or Microsoft Azure or stuff like that because they don't have those resources. I've heard like iCloud is hosted on those possibly. It's unknown, but I've definitely heard stories that Apple hosts their iCloud on other clouds. But they're not dependent. They could just switch that up. They can do their own. They're not dependent on that, right? But so like no one has a hold on Apple. No one can make Apple do anything that they don't want to do, right? But Google's got to put Google Maps on iOS. Facebook's app is the number one way to use Facebook. It's got to be on iOS, right? Yep. If Apple kicks Facebook out of the App Store completely, like the default Facebook app or the Facebook Messenger app or the Instagram app, it's like some people would leave iOS to go get an Android phone to get the Facebook app, but
I think a lot of people would use this as an excuse to say, I guess I can't log into my Facebook account ever again. Right. Oh,
no. But Facebook would be totally boned. Huge. They would be screwed.
I feel like to be real about it, I think Facebook would lose basically all of its non-dangerously crazy users and all of its young users, and all that would be left would be like QAnon conspiracies and anti-vaxxers and like angry mommy bloggers.
The point is that Apple's got a hold on the other people. They don't have, and they got nothing on Apple, so that's why the battle rages. Okay, so what's the latest developments in the battle? So first, there was some shenanigans with Apple's review process. Someone reviewing the WordPress app basically misunderstood it. It misunderstood the difference between WordPress, the software, and WordPress.com, the site. And there was some tussle, and then Apple said, "Oops, our bad," and fixed it. So that's just a poor timing on something that happens relatively often in the Apple App Store approval process. Especially, and it goes unnoticed when it happens to smaller apps, of Apple not understanding what the app is and getting their own policies wrong because they've got a whole team of people doing reviews who aren't necessarily
or even arguably
enough.
I've seen people make an argument that sometimes what Apple has done to them is be purposefully obtuse as an excuse to not let an app in where there's some other reason they don't want that app to be in the store.
So it's just bad timing for them to get exposed on that thing. So what they've done is Apple came out, I think today, and they were like, okay, we got a new thing for our App Store approval process, right? So they are making some effort to at least look better or do better. And what they're doing, the changes they've made are that if you're making just a bug fix patch, like a small patch, right? They're just going to let it go if your app's already approved, right? Without holding you up. And then if they happen to find something in your bug fix patch that they don't like, that is not approved, they'll let your app stay up and basically make you fix it in your next, your next go, right? So they're not gonna because there's been a lot of times where people had bug fixes and they got held up, or it's like they're just fixing a bug and suddenly their app's out of the store and they're afraid to fix their bugs because right?
Yep. But a lot of this still revolves around what are the parameters whereupon Apple will kick you out or force you to pay them the VIG.
So the second thing is they changed it so there is now some sort of a better appeals process or an unappeals process where there previously was none or whatever. So if you've got something that happened to you and you're not happy with the ruling, you can appeal better, I guess, than before. We'll see. We'll wait for people to actually put in appeals and see what happens to them to figure out how well that's working. And the third thing is, what was the third thing?
So they're
going to take suggestions and input from Apple developers into what the rules should and should not be. So basically, you can comment to Apple and say, hey, this rule's bullshit. This rule is good. You should add this rule. You should remove that rule. This rule's not clear, etc.
What if they just get 10,000 comments that are all just, don't charge 30% for in-app purchases?
Right. We'll see how that works, right? So the in-app purchases. So stories in that front, right? Facebook tried to put in a notice in their app to let users know that Apple was taking a 30% cut.
Yeah.
And that they could go to Facebook, they could go pay somewhere else and not through the app and deny Apple that money and pay the same price. Right? And Apple was like, no, you can't tell users irrelevant information.
Yeah, quote, irrelevant information. That is clearly a clause to let Apple quash anything they don't like that anyone says in an app during the payment process.
That's definitely an ambiguous rule. I'm sure you could go and find tons of apps with irrelevant information in them, in their UIs, that are approved and Apple doesn't give a crap. That's definitely a vague, arbitrarily, ambiguously, non-consistently enforced rule that Apple has in there so that for situations like this, they can, have a rule. It's like, oh, okay, we don't allow, this, right?
This is interesting because this is the kind of thing.
All those laws that say black people can't vote without actually writing down black people can't vote, and you write something else like, oh yeah, you can only register to vote on a Tuesday in the middle of the day in this part of town.
But you know what else this is like?
Where there's a bunch of white people with guns.
There were a bunch of fights, and there are still fights about when can companies of various types include taxes and fees that they have to pay to other entities in their prices they show you versus when do they have to be added after the fact. Like some places there are laws that say you can't include the sales tax in a price you publish because the sales tax has to be calculated after the fact to avoid the kinds of optics problems that state and local governments don't want to deal with. Like weird laws and weird rules happen all the time. I remember as a kid, Cedar Point, the roller coaster park, got a special exemption from the state of Ohio to still collect sales tax, but not say that they were collecting it and just include it in their prices, which was not allowed anywhere else in the state. Kind of like how some companies can say, oh, we're charging you this fee.
That sounds like not equal protection under the law to me.
Yeah, well, they applied it at like a county level where like Sandusky County has an exemption.
That sounds like not equal protection under the law to me.
That equal protection probably doesn't apply to a case like that.
I mean, I know what equal protection legally means, right? And that obviously
states can arbitrarily regulate commerce.
I know that is legal under the law as written and as enforced in the United States, but in principle, the same laws should apply to everyone everywhere. And that's a case where it's like, oh, well, I live in a different place, different law, right? It's like, oh, I'm in the next town over, different law. I make more money. I'm allowed to trade these stocks, right? I'm a accredited investor, different laws for me, right? And I see all of those as in principle, not equal protection.
But what I'm getting at here is this is more the question of providing that information is harmful to Apple's brand, but the information is true, but Apple is banning this information from being shared in a place where it would be relevant by claiming it's irrelevant. This is a battle that has never been resolved pretty much anywhere.
Right. The second battle that's going on, obviously the Fortnite one, the big one, right? The current status is that on iOS, you can still play Fortnite, but the developer account has been suspended. So you can't download Fortnite, but if you've already got it, you've already got it. So what that means is all the iOS Fortnite players are stuck in the previous season of Fortnite.
Ooh, I know enough about the kids to know that basically means they don't have Fortnite.
And are not getting updates. So it's sort of like a whole bunch of people playing Counter-Strike Source, and then everyone else on all the other platforms playing Counter-Strike Go. Right? They all got the update, but iOS isn't going to get the updates for now. And but the situation involving the Unreal Engine is still that, if you're making games with Unreal Engine, you can still get them on iOS. Just Epic itself can't get their games out, right?
Yep.
So the argument that I want to make that I haven't seen anyone make, right, which seems really straightforward to me, which is why I don't know, there must be some reason that explains why me, not a lawyer or expert in any way, has thought of this. Yet corporate lawyers paid lots of money have not thought of it, or at least not said it. There must be some reason, because this seems so obvious, right? The most basic thing we learned about antitrust, I even knew this as a kid from the Microsoft case, was that if you got a monopoly in one area, you can't use it to help yourself win and take over another market, right?
Yep.
Microsoft had monopoly on operating systems for PCs.
But already here's the problem. What's the market? Is the market smartphones?
I got you, right? You can't use that to wedge yourself in and take over in the browser department, right? That's what Microsoft got called out on, right? So it seems pretty obvious to me, right? This whole 30% App Store thing that's going on, right? Instead of framing it, as everyone has, as like Apple taking a cut of your apps, right? What it actually is Apple is wedging out PayPal, Stripe, right? Payment, Google Pay, right? You cannot use, if you've got an app in the Apple App Store, you cannot sell. Let's say you got a game that sells coins.
I see where you're going with this. You
can't use PayPal to sell your coins in your game on the Apple App Store. You must use Apple Pay. Right?
So if you go to a restaurant, they can be like cash only, or we only accept Amex.
That's true, but
and arguably in some places those restaurants might be monopolies because in that county there aren't other restaurants of that type.
But that restaurant is not itself have its own restaurant pay, and it does not control a significant portion of the restaurant market.
But that comes back to the market. What is the market? Is the market iPhone users or smartphone users?
Visa could not buy, if Visa bought several fast food chains and made it so that the only way to buy food at them is with Visa.
That might fly, actually. They might win that one.
Maybe, but imagine if McDonald's and they have to have a monopoly on fast food, right? So Burger King and Taco Bell and McDonald's and Chipotle and Wendy's and almost every single fast food, like more than half of it, is owned by Visa.
Also, where does Apple get the money from? Because Apple has Apple Pay, but you still inject money into the Apple Pay system from something else, like a credit card.
The point is, I want to see, right, that I think that, we should see PayPal, Stripe, and all those payment processors should be the ones complaining about Apple, saying, hey, developers want to like our payment platforms, but they can't use them in the Apple and their apps, their native apps in the Apple App Store, right? Apple is pushing us out with their antitrust, right?
I don't think that would fly, though, because I think this is framed more as this is Apple running a store. Stores can use whatever payment things they would like to use.
But you're not paying, you're not buying the thing from Apple. You're buying the thing from the developer, right?
Yeah, but you're buying it through an Apple-run marketplace.
For it to be a store, Apple would have to buy the app from the app developer and then resell it.
No, Amazon does straight pass-through sales, and they take a cut.
Yeah, okay.
You can't just pay with anything on Amazon.
You can pay with a lot of things.
Not anything, though. Rimco, you can't use Rimco to pay. That payment processor's not allowed.
If Amazon said the only way to buy anything on Amazon is with an Amazon credit card, I think that would be a little.
But Amazon, there's a much better claim that they have a near monopoly on like online purchases.
But they don't do that. You can use you can use Discover.
But this isn't a payment processor. They're not taking a payment processing fee. They're taking you are using our platform to host your app, to download the app, the infrastructure, everything. Like, this is a marketplace we own.
They're taking that fee on all payments, and they're making you process all payments through them and not anyone else.
But it's for the purpose of them collecting the cut that you have to agree to sell stuff in their marketplace. You're welcome to not sell stuff in their marketplace. Plenty of Android users out there.
But I think because as a side effect, it's anti-competitive against other payment processing companies that could force Apple to adopt a different model, right? Say,
no,
okay,
because Apple could trivially say you can pay with any payment processor, but we take 30%.
How would they do that? How would that be technologically possible?
My
money is going from me directly to PayPal and then to the app.
Yeah, what they're saying is if you're in our store, you can't directly sell stuff without going through our cash register, which actually is very common in farmers markets and art fairs and all sorts of things.
It's still, there's something going on there.
Yeah, I'm saying it is very hard to argue that Apple has a monopoly, except over people who choose to use Apple technology.
But there's an argument you could make over the fact that if you're a developer, right, is like, even though a lot of people use Android, it's been shown, numerically, right, that, you don't really make money selling like a game in the Android Google Play Store as much as you make money selling it on the Apple Store, right? It's like if you want to make money selling mobile apps, it's like, the Apple App Store is where people pay for things. The Google Play Store, not so much.
Yep.
Right? And that also has the side loading thing going on there too, right? There's no.
But is any amount of money acceptable for the owner of the marketplace to extract from the system for the purpose of providing the marketplace, which costs money to provide?
Right. Oh, let's say you got two farmers markets in town, right? And in one of them, all the farmers make bank for some reason that has all the customers, right, that pay. The other one has a lot of foot traffic, but for some reason, no one buys anything there.
Yep.
Right. Or very little. And it's like, they go to the big farmers market, starts to crack down and do evil shit, and they're like, we don't have a monopoly. Look at that other farmers market. And the farmer's like, we don't make any money in that market. But
there's also the problem of, do the users care or not? Most people who don't play Fortnite don't give a shit.
Well, for Fortnite for now, but there's a lot going on, right?
But I'm saying that I think it'll be very difficult for anyone to win against Apple in the end.
It's just an angle, right? That has not been discussed, right? It's like,
I'm just throwing on my armchair analysis. It's not like I have special knowledge here.
And I say, it seems like they're wedging out the payment processors, right? You got to use Apple Pay. You can't use anything else.
I think that's a side effect. Like, they don't care about the payment processors. Their only goal is, if your thing is in our store, we want a cut of anything you do.
Well, I think what Apple actually believes is that, is actually what they say. Like, Apple they're very good at saying what they believe, right? So they say, it's like, we want you to use Apple Pay because it's more secure, it's safer, it's a better experience for the customer, right? And all those things are kind of true, right? And that's why they don't want, PayPal in the App Store or whatever, because it's like, if there's some shenanigans, suddenly Apple customers getting screwed over because something PayPal did, right? They don't want that, right? But the side effect is you may or may not sort of be anti-trusting out those competitors who aren't.
But if that were a real argument, they would just let you use any payment processor. But the rule is you still have to pay Apple 30% of any transactions that happen in their store.
But then you could just hide the transactions from Apple if they aren't
but hiding the transactions is how Apple will then say you violated our rules and kick you out and probably win.
How could they know you hid them? You hid them.
By someone could download the app and try it out.
If I pay money to, as I'm saying, technologically, if I pay to PayPal, you got an app. I buy coins in your app.
Yep.
Right.
So I go to the app.
With PayPal, Apple has no way to know how much money I gave you or that I even gave you money.
But that was part of my terms of service. You got to pay me 30% of all those transactions, or I kick you out.
Everyone lies and pays you nothing.
Yeah. Then they kick them all out. That's what would happen. That's how that works in the real world.
How would they know? Everyone would just say, no one paid me anything.
Scott, in situations like this, usually what happens is the company that suspects the problem will approach the companies that are the biggest likely offenders, demand an audit, and if they don't comply, kick them out of their marketplace.
Pretty sure Apple would rather, it's a big difference between Apple having to do that.
Also, all Apple would have to do is have an employee try the app and say, oh, look, I can buy stuff through PayPal here. And if I do, I will buy something now. Oh, look, that company did not give us a 30%.
The point is Apple having to do that to every single app and the billions and zillions of apps in the App Store and audit all of them versus automatically collecting 30% without having to do anything. Right?
I guess, is Apple obligated to create an in-app purchase ecosystem or not? They could just say no in-app purchases. Fuck you.
And they could say no app on the App Store is allowed to have in-app purchases, and then they themselves would lose a shit ton of money because everyone would lose money.
Yep, because the reality is most people don't actually buy or install many apps.
It's not just the in-app purchases. It's also you buy a $10 app, $7 goes to the developer, $3 goes to Apple.
Yep.
And even if the app has no in-app purchases after the initial $10.
But the other thing is, what if, here's a hypothetical, what if without taking a significant chunk of all the in-app purchases, the App Store itself is infeasible, won't make enough money, and the way for them to make money would just be to scale it back, do less reviews of products, let less things in, just make it shittier. Like, there's a lot of negative outcomes for everyone involved that could happen here.
Just have a different model for it that makes sense. Like, hey, you want to list an app in the App Store. If the app collects is a free, because already if you have a free app, right, all you have to do is pay to be an Apple developer.
Yep.
And then you can put your many free apps as you want, right?
But most people only make free apps because they want to have in-app purchases.
Obviously, most apps in the App Store are free, which is what Apple also says.
Yeah.
But if anyone makes an app that is not free in any way, right, then you have to pay Apple a flat fee to list the app, the listing fee.
I don't think that would make enough money for Apple to even bother continuing with the marketplace.
The app stores exist to sell. They didn't even have the App Store on the first iPhone. The existence of the App Store makes Apple its money via making people want to buy an iPhone. It's not
actually clear. We don't have data to show if that is true.
The fact that they make the 30% is actually, it's a cart following the horse situation.
Oh, but I would argue that 30% is probably critical and was probably, though I don't know, part of their business plan all along.
No. It feels to me, I mean, I was there. I was there live at that time.
But that was a very different market too.
Yeah, Apple definitely, I felt like at the beginning, caved in and allowed the native apps by third-party developers, which they didn't want to do originally. They allowed it, with the intention that, this will make people want to buy iPhones, right? And the App Store is just a way to get people to buy, to make, the phone desirable. And then it's like, oh, actually, we're not making money on selling phones. People are just keeping their phones for a long time, not upgrading them so much. We'll make our money on that. Oh, but the App Store, look how much money it's making. All right, well, that's where the money is, I guess.
Yeah, but there's sort of the real problem is still capitalism in that many things,
always capitalism.
But I'm saying many things like this, often what can happen in a market is the rent seekers are actually using that rent to provide the service or to make it worthwhile to the people that own that company to bother providing the service.
They're collecting plenty of extra rent. They could easily charge way less rent.
But if that would make them less profits, why bother? Why not just shut it all down? Like there might be a better way.
Because you're at least pretending to be less evil than the competitors.
But fiduciary duty, you are beholden to your shareholders to do the right thing for them, not for society or for anyone else.
You already have the most valuable stock there is. I think you're doing well, right?
Yep, but I'm just saying there are many things that if you strip away the monetization that late capitalism has sort of thrust into those markets, those products would just disappear entirely.
By that logic, why doesn't an Apple shareholder complain and say, hey, well, you should be charging 50%, not 30%.
They do all the time. Shareholders, oftentimes activist shareholders will try to buy enough shares to force a company to be even more evil. That is the thing that happens.
So if they don't have to listen to those even more evil shareholders, then
they only don't have to listen to those more evil shareholders because smarter institutional investors hold on to enough of the stock to have enough of a majority to fend off those lawsuits.
Is that if you can fend off a guy who says you should be charging 50 instead of 30, then you can fend off a guy who says you should be charging 30 instead of 10.
Maybe not, because sometimes, like, if the profits aren't high enough,
you can ask a judge to determine the correct number you should be charging, assuming that what you're doing is legal in the first place.
No, what it comes down to more is that the company could just redirect strategically entirely if something is not worth the hassle to maintain a high squeeze rate of the profits from that area. Also, a lot of things, like, here's a good example. Facebook sucks. Facebook is evil. Facebook probably harmed America and the world in irreparable ways, and Facebook should be destroyed. However, nothing else has the access that Facebook has, especially in local, hyper-local, even rural communities. So a lot of like left-wing activists organize on Facebook because without that tool, there is no other way to reach a certain subset of the population they need to reach. What do you do about that when the thing that is needed...
Nationalize it because it's an essential tool.
But there gets an even thornier problem.
Utility.
If you have the national social network, that could also get real bad in a hurry for a whole different set of reasons.
That's that's the old that's what right-wing people say. Oh, if the government owns it, then it's not free. If the government owns the printing press, they won't print your
But would you trust our current government with Would you trust our current government with the social network?
No.
Yeah. Hence
the point is
like Twitter. Twitter is irreplaceable, and Twitter also needs to be replaced because it's dangerous and broken. There's no way to make a competitor to it in capitalism that could possibly succeed. In fact, Twitter itself can't succeed.
What you gonna do?
So in some other news, this is a very rim
still
news.
Going with news. We're not that news.
One more news. We can skip some of the other light ones, but this one is very tech news. Everyone kept talking to me about how this is a very rim news. This Chrome feature and the DNS thing.
Oh, okay.
I don't think we actually talked about this on the show.
We didn't talk about this.
So
I know about this.
There is a thing that ISPs do that is evil and I think should be made illegal, where the DNS server they give you, if you're not a smart tech person who knows how to avoid this, if you mistype a URL, they'll take you to some other site. They'll give you a DNS result to that anyway that takes you to some spam site.
Right, so you type into your browser .com, which doesn't exist. No one's registered that domain or pointed it anywhere. And what you should get as a response from the DNS server system, right, is no such domain, NX, right? But
there's rules. This system is a hierarchy. It works this way for a reason.
You're supposed to get an NX, which says, you typed in a non-existent domain. It does not register in the DNS system. But instead, your ISP will send you an IP address and say, hey, here's the or CNAME or whatever. Here's the address of that domain, .com, and you end up at a website that is run by Verizon or who knows who.
Usually it has some ads on it.
Right. Usually it's got ads and search results or stuff, and that your ISP is making money on that and tracking you and learning about you and such. And they should not be allowed to do that.
Yep. So Chromium had a pretty good feature where cleverly it's a way to detect if the environment you're in is doing... There's a lot more details I'm going to skip because this is a news and I don't want to go deep. There's a whole bunch of stuff about corporate domains and private DNS that I'm just going to skip. But basically, what it does is it'll make up 3 random domains with like random top-level domains like blah.
Right, almost guaranteed that none of them will be real and registered so that when it looks for them, it should see NXs, right?
Yep.
And if it happens to accidentally pick a real one, the odds of there being like, more than 2 out of 3 not NXs.
Coming back with like a specific IP address, not likely.
Not likely. So that way they can find out if you open your Chrome browser and it's like, aha, they know immediately if your ISP is shady or not, and can act accordingly.
So that'll actually work pretty well to detect if you are like using a hijacky shitty DNS, like pretty good way. Yeah. And then the browser can change its behavior when you make a typo or type something that probably isn't a domain name into your like URL bar, because the world decided that search and URLs are basically the same thing now. Welcome to the year 2020. Yep. I have thoughts about that, both that are nuanced, that are beyond the scope of the show. Anyway. But I lament the fact that DNS is not the strict tree hierarchy that it used to be. Mm-hmm. So the problem is those requests, if the ISP is not doing something evil, will basically go all the way up to the top of DNS and end up asking the official, hard-coded, there aren't that many of them, root servers of DNS, hey, what the fuck is this top-level domain?
Yep.
And since this feature was launched, Chromium's basically been DDoSing the root of the entire DNS system. Mm-hmm. There's good graphs here. This kind of thing happens kind of often because people who come up with a very clever feature don't fully understand the ramifications of how that feature will interact with existing structures on the internet like DNS or NTP.
Or it's just if you write code for something like Chromium and it gets deployed, you have to realize your code is running on an enormous number of computers around the world, right? So things that don't matter or work perfectly in your local test, right? Your test framework, everything works great. You do not. There's no way for you to test the ramifications of your code running on, every Windows PC.
Yep.
Or most of them.
And that's something that people who write code actually really need to think about. But usually the person writing any particular piece of code doesn't necessarily have that broad and classical understanding of all the possible ramifications. Right. And the people deciding about the features may not, they may assume that the engineers will work these things out. There's not a good way to handle this.
Right. You're also only thinking about, your computers, whatever you're working on, right? When I code at work, I'm thinking about our work computers and I'm thinking about our users and their computers, right? If there's some side effect for computers far away somewhere else, I'm not thinking about those too much if I'm not directly interacting with them. But code on a computer somewhere could affect code on computers everywhere. And all the software of the world is not just one monolith that is written by one person.
Yep. But I would say the real solution to this problem, the only reason Chromium even added a feature like this, is to try to get around a real problem of people's DNS servers hijacking things they type in to serve them ads or otherwise spy on them.
Yep.
That really, there is no technological solution to that problem short of nationalizing DNS.
I think there is a solution to that problem. I think the solution should be
regulation is the solution.
Well, that is one solution. I think the operating systems should do something about it, right? The operating systems, OS X and Windows, right? There's no reason that they couldn't just not, when they do DHCP, right? They could, right? They could collect, right? Figure out which ISPs are good and bad. They could figure out when you install the OS or turn the computer on, they can figure out which ISP you have.
That, however, goes down a lot of the same paths that the solution we just talked about goes down. That is a clever solution at scale that may have unforeseen consequences.
But it won't be pinging random things. They'll just build pretty quickly a database of which ISPs are good or bad. Look at what's
by
my
gathering
IP,
data
right?
on what URLs people are typing in on their operating system level.
No.
People would not be cool with that.
They would just look at your DHCP and then they would say, okay, these,
how do they know
ISPs,
which DNS servers are bad, especially if these are all 10 dots inside of ISP private networks?
If you just type IP config on a Windows computer, you can just see which ISP you have, right? It's it's routing through.
Yeah, I don't want Windows making decisions. I do not want my operating system making decisions based on the information I have configured in my network settings.
No, not something that if you configure something in your network settings.
But I configured DHCP. Use the DNS server I pointed it at. Don't ask questions.
The default DHCP. No, if you type in a DNS server, that's what you're using, right? I'm saying 99% of people who don't type in anything, they just turn their computer on and don't touch the networking settings at all.
I'm saying you should still the operating system should still be obligated to trust whatever DNS server comes back in that DHCP request.
I'm saying it should only do that if you tell it to, or if you're not on if you're on some sort of, public ISP.
Windows should never care what ISP I'm on. That is a bad solution to this problem.
If you're on Spectrum or Fios or something and it's a known evil ISP, it should switch your DNS server to be like Microsoft's DNS server.
Yeah, that would lead to an antitrust. Microsoft is hijacking your DNS request to their own private servers.
Microsoft sends you to Google's DNS server. It's not antitrust. They're sending you to someone else, just someone that they trust.
Yeah, that is a terrible idea.
Great idea.
That idea is very similar to the idea Chromium has. That is putting the logic to solve a problem way too low in the stack and making a lot of assumptions for something that's going to be deployed at scale.
It's not gonna make a zillion DNS requests that are unnecessary.
I can imagine a lot of unforeseen consequences of that. I can imagine a lot of difficult to troubleshoot problems. I can imagine a lot of corporate networks failing in novel ways.
I don't think a corporate network wouldn't have.
What if I want to go to those? What if I want to use my ISP's DNS? I don't care about the hijacking. Don't decide for me. Don't send my request to Google. I don't trust Google.
Too bad. If your only argument is the one that's in favor of the evil thing we're trying to eliminate.
No, I'm saying the operating system's network stack should be pure and specific. Don't overload your bullshit business logic into it. The network stack should not look at the ISP you connected to and make a judgment about whether or not to overwrite the DNS setting that came back in a DHCP packet.
I think it should.
I think that is a terrible idea, and I think the right solution to this is
It's a great idea. It's much better than the Chromium idea.
Actually, I think the Chromium one's a better solution because that's a piece of software. It's not the operating system. The
Chromium one's got to make all kinds of requests, right? And nonsense, right?
Yes, but it doesn't mess with your network stack settings. What you propose will just lead to a lot of difficult to troubleshoot problems.
It would actually solve more problems, because how many problems in non-browsers are caused by having shitty DNS that sends you to weird things on bad domains? Now all your other apps would suddenly have good DNS operating system wide.
Yeah, I still think this
instead of only Chromium having good DNS.
Yeah, the problem is too, I don't want anyone to change what the network stack of the computer is. They should.
You're changing. You are a person who's going to type in your own DNS server.
Yes, so but you don't assume what the other people want.
I am only assuming that if you're some customer who's on Spectrum and you've never changed your network settings ever,
I don't want Windows to make any decision based on what ISP I'm connected to.
But you know what? It's better for the vast majority of people.
Actually, probably not. Most people are probably fine with those spam things because those spam things usually
they just don't know better. You'd be helping them out.
Yeah, I don't want low-level systems to solve higher-order problems. That is a recipe for disaster.
It's not a low. You're solving it on the problem on the level that it is.
Yeah, if you want to frame it that way,
your ISP is setting your the IP address of your DNS server to a bad DNS server. We're going to set it to a good one. We're solving the problem right at the spot where it's caused.
I think a better solution would just be to have a law saying that DNS servers that are used in public ISPs cannot return results that are not.
I don't think you're not going to get a law that law ever.
I mean, we're not going to. That law is more feasible than anything you proposed. Like if you propose what you just said to Microsoft, you'd be laughed out of the room.
I don't think so. I think they might be like, ooh.
I think that would be a terrible idea.
Yeah, Google liked it. Google
is trying to get you to use their DNS servers. They can collect a shit ton of data from you.
Actually, I don't know if the Google public DNS actually collects.
You think it doesn't?
It doesn't collect user-specific data. I think
it collects what URLs are being queried. That's a huge amount of information.
They're looking at which domains are the most queried and stuff like that.
Yep. It also does have enough metadata. Like there's enough metadata there to figure out who's doing what pretty easily.
If they wanted to, yeah.
Yeah.
What are you going to use? OpenDNS? Lol.
Yeah.
That's broken in a different, worse way.
I guess my thinking is DNS and DHCP should be sacrosanct, relatively straightforward specifications that make no assumptions.
If people are using a non-sacrosanct DNS, force them to use a sacrosanct one.
No, because Google's not a sacrosanct one. Google's got a lot of problems. Google does a lot of weird stuff.
Here's the way you could do it. You could effectively make a list of known DNS servers that are evil and just block them all and be like, not allowed, right? And
then most people's Windows boxes just wouldn't work and they wouldn't know why.
No, because it would say, hey, your ISP's DNS server is on a list of banned DNS servers that behaves improperly.
Yeah, I remember Netflix tried hey, your ISP sucks, complain about it, and how that didn't solve any problems and just confused people.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
If you're so picky, right?
I'm just saying, as a general piece of advice, don't try to solve high order problems in low level systems. That is usually the wrong decision.
I'm solving the problem where it is. It's a problem of your DNS server IP address being set to a shitty one. I'm going to set it to a good one.
Okay. Anyway, the last thing, we're not going to talk about this in depth, but it's a little piece of news. Don't buy Elon Musk's brain implant and put it in your brain.
Buying the brain implant.
People want to. People are into this.
Those are just sock puppet accounts or people that Elon Musk gave drugs to.
I think there are people who want this, and all I will say, you don't need to watch Black Mirror to figure this out.
That's a self-solving problem.
Brain interfaces should not be used until there are not megacorps making them.
Pretty much. Until I can, put together my own brain implant in my house. Like I put together a PC in my house.
Yep.
Right? Until you have a cyberpunk shop down in the corner next to the digital tattoo shop.
Zero AI, see through anything.
Right. Don't go and get don't, like I always said that I'm not going to get brain implant 1.0. I'll probably get 2.0 or maybe even 3.0. But if Elon Musk is making the brain implant, I'm not getting 1 million.0. I'm not getting 2 million.0.
I mean, just all right. But anyway, things of the day. So,
what was my thing of the day?
I'll do mine first. So, this is a pretty cool article. It is plausible, but I'm not going to say that it's true. But it made the rounds. News was talking about it. It's an interesting story. But it's basically the story. It was published recently of someone who claims to have worked at Apple, and in the course of working for them, helped probably the CIA make special iPods that had hardware and software in them that could collect and hide data, but appeared from all outward investigation to be a normal iPod.
Right. Well, what the actual story is more like people from the government, right?
The DOE, which is already that's nuclear stuff.
Apple didn't give permission for this. They probably wouldn't have ever, right? These people basically snuck into getting jobs at Apple, developed it while working at Apple, and then disappeared.
Yeah, but we're told there was you read the story. I'm not going to read the story to you, but it basically tells the story of how this thing supposedly went down. And there's a lot of plausible stuff in here, and it's an interesting, fascinating story.
Right. We obviously can't prove that true or false, right? There's no way to do that, right? Apple can't even prove it true or false, probably, right? But it seems true-ish enough, right, to at least be worth mentioning.
It's yep, and it's also in terms of the details,
worst case, it's just a really good story.
But the details are tracking with what I just based on my own professional experience, what I would need in a product like that. How would you do it? The details are pretty specific. So whoever wrote the story, even if it's false, put a lot of thought into what would such a device actually need to be like in the real world.
Yep. It's basically either if it's true, then it's true. If it's not true, someone did so much work writing this to make it, so as believable and plausible as possible, and that itself is worthy of giving them a read.
Yep. The only thing I don't think is plausible is the article speculates about what they were trying to spy on, and I don't think it was a Geiger counter. I can think of a lot of other SIGINT type things that someone would want to do with a device like that to smuggle data in and out of a place, possibly from sensors. Geiger counter, I think there were better ways to handle that, but who knows?
I'm sure. It's I'm sure the government already had plenty of tiny hidden Geiger counter things that you wouldn't need an iPod one. But
remember, the key to an iPod is whatever it is, hide in plain sight with a device that can be inspected pretty thoroughly and still not return anything, any deviant result that would require further investigation.
Yep.
You find some.
It's an iPod.
Yep.
And
if I hide a tiny micro SD card somewhere on my body, there are a lot of ways that someone could find that. But if someone finds my iPod because I handed it to them, that's a very different situation.
Yep. Anyway, so my thing of the day is this little cute website, lordofthemanor.io. And it's a little tiny Sim City-ish kind of game, right? You collect some resources by building, you build a little forest hut, and then it starts chopping the wood in the nearby area. Then you get wood. Then you can use the wood to build other buildings, right, etc. The only buildings you can't build are the residential buildings that house your population. They just sort of appear naturally as your, domain increases in quality. Houses will appear and upgrade. And it's just a cute little sim game. It's not the greatest game. It's not going to occupy you for a long time, right? But it's thing of the day because look, someone made this in a browser. It runs in your browser, and it's it's this nice. They're still working on it. It's super speedy and responsive, and it's it could have been a desktop app. You wouldn't even know. It's wow, you did this in the web. It's that's pretty freaking impressive. Wow, good job. I played it. It only took me hardly any time to upgrade everything to the max and get a huge pile of gold and jewelry and pretty much every resource available. So, it's not going to occupy your time too much.
It's got a pretty good interface. I'm poking at it right now.
Yeah, it's a really good UI considering,
it is. You know what it does? You know what makes me really pleased with this? I can zoom out to an appropriate level. So many games don't let me zoom out far enough.
That's what I'm saying. You zoom in and zoom out with the scroll wheel, super smooth. It's pretty damn good. Gives you some, Euro board game kind of feels a little bit, right? But I think mostly it's just kind of inspiring. It's imagine taking the async WebSockets technology of like a Jackbox or an 18xx.games and combining it with this kind of UI, that's the kind of game that you can make on the web right now, with not too much difficulty. You should try it.
Yeah. In the Meta Moment, as we've said, we'll be live on September 4th, coming up real soon at the Crunchyroll Expo with Judge Anime by its cover, and also pretty soon after that.
Sooner than I thought. That's in Friday.
September 18th, where is the finish line? Brand new lecture for PAX. We got some MagFest stuff we're working on. We might be making our first ever appearance at MagWest because it's all virtual.
We don't have to go there. Yeah, if there's any conventions far away, like MagWest, that we normally wouldn't go to ever because it's too far or not worth it, we can go there now. So
yeah, so stay tuned on all that. Otherwise, like, type Geek Nights into Google and find our stuff and hang out in our Discord and watch our live streams. And we got videos, we got stuff. We're streaming, we're hanging out, we're doing things during the quarantine. And as winter comes, we got to do more and more stuff indoors. And we might be making more and more content because what else are we going to do?
Yep. Yeah. And I might, maybe we should read the book club book, Tail of Genji, at some point.
Yep. I'm trying to figure out at what point would I have enough free time to read books because without commutes.
I read some comic books yesterday.
But like we keep saying, without a commute, like, I don't have a lot of time to read because I keep saying this because I think it's important for people to internalize. The COVID crisis does not mean you have to be like more productive in your hobbies or your pursuits. Most people don't actually have any more free time now. They're just restricted.
Historically, did previous pandemics, were during the flu epidemic, did the people who survived and didn't get the flu, did they suddenly do a whole bunch of great stuff because they were at home all the time?
Yep.
Do unemployed people have a lot of productivity? No, I can tell you the last time I was unemployed, I
remember you went from 0 to 100 miles an hour at find new job.
Yeah,
you put like every waking hour into finding a better job.
Not every waking hour, but I definitely...
Well, you put in like a work week worth of finding a better job.
Yeah, I tried to stream like, some Ustream maybe like once or twice or something in those days because that's the time it was, right?
It was a different time, you understand.
Like the mid-2000s, I was unemployed for like a few weeks.
Yep.
And it was just like...
and some people
I thought, well, I'm going to do while I'm sitting here and I'm not looking for a job, I'm going to do all kinds of shit. I did only a little bit of shit, about as much as the little bit of shit I'm doing now, right?
Yep.
So that's, if you're doing a little bit of extra shit, that's good enough. That's what you're going to do.
Yep. Like I'm spending a lot of time, like I decided I'm going to try to get like way ripped. Like I'm working out a lot, but that takes away time from all the other things I could be doing. I don't have more free time. So just do not fall for the illusion of free time during this. You don't actually have more free time. You just have less options to spend that free time.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually talked for almost an hour already.
Uh-oh.
And the listener actually just pointed out another classic. This is like an old school Geek Nights. Rim and Scott argue through the news for 45 minutes and then are too hungry to do the main bit. Is that what this show is? Because
we'll talk about some biometric of some kind. So
let's do the highest level of like, what are biometrics and like the ramifications
so when
of
people
them?
Talk about biometrics, they're usually talking about biometric authentication, which is stuff like fingerprint sensor, Apple Face ID, some sort of system where you're using your iris detector in a movie, but those exist kind of. Where you're trying to prove who you are to your computer to log in or prove who you are to a computer so that it opens a door so you can go in the office.
Yep,
right?
And that is one use of biometrics as one of many credentials.
That's only biometric authentication, right? Biometrics as a whole is simply measuring human biology with computers, right?
Biometric.
Your heart rate sensor that you use with your Fitbit, that's biometrics, right?
In fact, the Wikipedia right here, for the application of statistics to biology, see biostatistics.
Yeah, if you got some like device, a breathalyzer test.
Wait, what the fuck? For the fraudulently marketed thigh contour treatment, see Peter Foster?
It's some scam probably.
I guess there's a scam that was called biometrics or something. Anyway.
Probably. You could consider like a baseball, a speed gun used to track a baseball sort of biometric.
It's one step removed, like it's an order, but it's capturing a holistic metric of a biological action or a biological system.
But if you aim it at Usain Bolt while he's running and doesn't have, when he gets hopefully better from COVID, then that would be a biometric, right?
Yeah. So biometrics, like, I guess they are a very powerful tool, like way more powerful than you might realize, even if you're already afraid of like facial tracking. Like the power here is immense. The danger here is immense, but also the capabilities to better mankind are immense. This is a field that needs a lot of care and judgment and thought and guidance and ethics.
Yep. It's like, okay, we can measure hopefully most things about the human body. You can be completely measured and quantized in, many, if not all aspects, right? Well, that's great for your health if you have a doctor who acts in good faith, because now we can figure out exactly what's wrong with you and fix it to the best of our ability.
What if your doctor acts in bad faith to try to scam you or harm you in some way? What if your doctor is acting in good faith, but let's say the technology that underpins American healthcare is shitty and all that biometric data gets stolen by someone who isn't your doctor, even though your doctor is using it to help you? Mm-hmm. That data could be used by a third party to harm you immensely.
Yep. It's like, we talk about biometric authentication as being the one that gets the most attention, right? But it's like, it's like sometimes you want to prove exactly who you are, and sometimes you don't want anyone to know who you are. But your biology is the one thing that you cannot yet escape, right?
Yep.
So if there is biometric authentication, someone who has access to it can always prove who you are, even in cases where you don't want anyone to prove who you are. And if the data is somehow messed up or the system is faulty, it may become difficult or impossible to prove who you are when you want to prove who you are.
I have two examples. So one, I worked, as you know, a long time ago. God, that was a long time ago. I did project management and IT for hospitals. So I had to wash my hands and then turn the page a lot. I washed my fingerprints off over time because of the chemicals I was using, something that happens to nurses often. So I didn't have fingerprints. So the biometric systems that I used as part of the security infrastructure I interacted with either would not work because I did not have something that would recognize as a fingerprint in their system, or recognized a fingerprint that was so generic that fucking any finger would open it if I was using my own system.
Well, yeah, it's like, they register some doctor who's rubbed his fingerprints off. He registers with a blank fingerprint. Now all the blank fingerprint people can get in.
Yep. That's why, while in the movies, you often see single-factor biometric authentication. Here's the two real dangers of that. One, what if someone steals that by, like, pulling your eye out like a spy and holding it in front of a camera?
That's already happens in every cyberpunk story ever.
Yeah, but that's a real fear. I have seen proofs of concept of sham eyes for retina scanners, sham fingerprints, sham everything. You don't even need to steal. You don't need to cut someone's finger off necessarily. Just get their fingerprint and make a mold. Make it out of capacitive material that will feel like a finger. Put a little warmer in it. Like, once someone has the data that comprises your biometric, they have your biometric and can prove with that factor that they are you.
So you want to get really fun, right? Okay, hypothetical distant future, right? We have something that's the equivalent of a camera with a super zoom lens, and anyone you aim it at, you can get their full DNA sequence, right? Every single pair on the whole thing, not just like, right? Like the full fucking thing. And then you print out a clone body. It's so precise.
I print out DNA evidence to obscure the crime I just committed and pin it on someone else.
Right. All kinds of crazy shit going down then, right?
So in authentication, biometrics must always be one of several factors, though I hear the pedants out there. I got to point out right now.
As long as humans remain biological.
Technically, in a pedantic and meaningless sense, passwords are biometrics because they are physically stored in your brain and theoretically could be retrieved. There's an engram in your brain somewhere that has your password in it. There's a famous old Superman TV episode I remember where there's hostages and they're tied up and there's a donkey that can read minds. Let's not worry about why there's a donkey that can read minds.
It's Superman. We know this stuff like that.
And basically one of the three people knows the combination to a safe. But you can't let them open the safe because there's like kryptonite in it, and they're going to use it to kill Superman. Like, there's a whole plot.
Oh, no.
So basically, the criminal brings in the donkey, and they're like, I'll never say the password. I'll never say the name of the combination. And he's just like, all right, don't think about the combination to the safe. No matter what you do, don't think that number. And then the donkey's just like 13, 23, 13. And they got the combination.
Well, fuck you, donkey.
Yep. But in terms of like, forget authentication. Like the other, a recent one. This is something that happens to me today, and this is not the like far future security problem or even the near future security problem. It's more it makes security more annoying for me. So I work for a fancy company where I have to use 3-factor authentication to get into anything. So I've got a physical device that I need to have on me to be able to get in. That device has a fingerprint scanner on it. It also has a sensor, so it can basically detect light with a little camera on it. It does a lot of stuff, but one of the things I do with it is I have to scan my fingerprint to turn it on. And once it's on, to get into certain systems, I have to hold it up to my screen, and that system, after I enter my username and my password, flashes timecode data that this device will then use with random seeds to generate a TOTP code. And I need to use all those things to log into a system. If I take a shower and I don't wait about an hour before I try to log in, my finger's a little swollen up, like from the water. Fingerprint just doesn't fucking work. Can't log into anything. So when I wake up in the morning, I log into the systems, lock everything, then I go take a shower, then I get to work.
I just wrote a fictional story, right? So here you go. So it's Indiana Jones, right? And he's obviously Indiana Jones knows something, right? He doesn't want the Nazis to know.
Yep.
So he's got to get past the Nazis. So what he did is he recruited a bunch of people to dress up like Indiana Jones, and that way the Nazis are going to catch a bunch of fake Indiana Joneses, and the real Indiana Jones is going to make it past all the Nazis and deliver whatever.
All
right?
Good plot.
Okay, so it's in a perfect sort of future. Right, so the Indiana Jones clone people, right? They'll have the same face as Indiana Jones, so they get past the facial recognition system. They fool that, right? It's let's see, how else do they need?
Well,
to
there's
fool?
two ways this could go. This could go. They all think they're Indiana Jones, and they all try to steal the thing.
Oh, possibly. But the point of the story, right, is like so they capture some Indiana Joneses. They want to figure out which one's the real one, right? It's like something as simple as something that even exists today. Forget far future, right? Let's say the Nazis have the Fitbit database and they know everyone's like heart rate zones.
Yep.
They take some guns, they point them at the Indiana Joneses, and they make them run on treadmills, and they see who runs like Indiana Jones.
Yep.
And it's like,
I've seen systems where it would ask you and your friends to type a bunch of stuff, and then if any of you type anything, it's pretty accurate at telling who typed it, just based on the natural cadences. Yeah.
Or you're walking. Rim could put on the best Lupin the Third costume in the world, or Lupin could put on the best Lupin the Third costume in the world.
Yeah.
And you can just see by the way he walks. Oh, that's Rim.
Yep. It's it's funny.
Question.
I have an anecdote.
You could not fake it either. There's nothing you could do.
The way I move my hands and the way my head like bobs as I walk has caused numerous people to recognize me in VR before I introduced myself. Like, oh, there's Rim. This has literally happened to me.
Yeah.
But let's forget about credentials. Here, the other way this goes, biometrics is also data about you, facial recognition. Now, listen to old Geek Nights. We talked a lot about like powerful, cool things you could do with facial recognition, like the killer app for Google Glass. And of course, there are obvious, as we're about to talk about, dangers of this. But if we forget the dangers first, here's the cool app. I always have a camera on. I got software. If I meet a piece of shit person, like I meet a Nazi, I meet a Republican, I meet like some incel, like dangerous person, someone who's annoying and harassing people, I want to be able to flag them like that person's annoying so that my close personal friends, if they ever encounter that person, their camera will pop up a warning and say, hey, Rim said this person's a piece of shit. Cool feature.
You could also have the opposite thing, right? Some shady dude's coming up to you on the street. Normally, run, don't talk, do not engage. But maybe it says, Rim verified this person is cool person. And I'm like, huh? Maybe. All right, I'll be like, it was a listener, and they just happened to recognize me, and I was going to run away. But thanks to this system that is not being used in an evil way, I was able to get a slightly more interesting morning by meeting a listener. Right?
Yep. Now, Cool. Like that would be an awesome thing. Being able to share the information about dangerous people with my close friend network so that they could avoid situations like harassment at conventions, that's a killer app. However, that exact same technology is like, you want to have super stalkers? That is how you have super stalkers. That is like, you could track someone to the ends of the earth with that technology.
Yep.
Because people can't.
Some piece of shit guy also buys it, is walking down the street, right, looking at people, and he sees someone, and it's like, his piece of shit friend labeled someone as
an easy mark.
That SJW from Twitter, that piece of crap, right, and goes over and he starts something with someone else, with someone he would have otherwise ignored.
Right? All these fascist groups would enable everyone with, here are the biometrics of people we are targeting. If you see them, you'll know those are the people to target. Like, that's kind of already happening, and this would accelerate that.
Yep.
I don't know what to do about facial recognition.
And we haven't even begun to discuss the fact that, any of these systems that depend upon machine learning have been trained with, basically racist data sets or,
biometric models to predict behavior or do other things are trained by data that will just institutionalize and code the same institutional racism, sexism, and other problems that already exist in the systems they're modeling.
Right. It's like, even if you were to train the data sets on, a good proportion of data from across the board, right, so that it would be equally good at detecting black faces and white faces and Chinese faces and, Iranian faces and whatever kind of faces, right, and it is equally good at detecting male and female faces and child faces and senior faces, and if you somehow got a data set so large that it removed all discrimination and it was equally good at, doing things, suddenly that data set is so big that it's dangerous.
Yep, because that data set could be used to find trends, and those trends could be used to target individuals or groups of people who would be vulnerable to certain kinds of manipulation or attack, kind of like what happened in the 2016 election, but on the tiniest scale compared to what's coming. And the problem is facial recognition technology is incredibly advanced already. The killer apps we talk about only aren't made in public because, for the most part, people have recognized that they would be abused and misused to such a degree that the public can't be trusted with it.
I could not think of any public people who would, with any facial recognition app, right, that other than the one that people use, which is sort your photo collection on your computer.
Yep.
Right.
But think my old GX1 camera, it can't even output video on its own HDMI port. Yet it has a library in it. I haven't updated it in a long time. I took pictures of all our friends years and years ago with this dumb camera, and I put names next to all of them. It flags every picture with, oh, that's Scott, that's Emily, that's all these people. I could take that.
But it's not. You're not accessing the database would be. It's not the.
I made my own database.
Right, you made your own database, which is fine because it's going to be small, only for you, not very harmful, right? Not being merged with the databases of all faces everywhere, right? It's just for your personal use, right? It's like, what harm is there in Rim sorting his photos or having a camera that autofocuses?
But that's my data. I could share it. What if I drag a photo of someone I take into a reverse image search, find other photos of that person, and then use that to stalk? Well, that already happens.
You could just do that with a camera that doesn't even have the feature.
I'm saying that already happens. The technology's already out there, but we're not controlling it, and we're not handling it. And the technology is getting so advanced that it's asymmetric. Governments and mega corporations have access to advanced facial recognition technology that I do not have parity to use to counter the effects they might have with it.
Yeah, but obviously, it's like I was saying though, it's not actually the detection technology of saying, oh, that's a human face, right? That's the most dangerous. It's simply the large database is the most dangerous, right? If you don't have the large databases, then all the other things are real. It's like, oh, I have a machine that can read fingerprints. Yes, so does everybody. They're really cheap. You can just buy one.
But even without the large database,
I have a database of all fingerprints. Uh-oh.
You use a zoom lens to get good photos of one person. You're making a database of one. What are the facial biometrics of one person? But then you seed that not with a database of biometric data. You compare that against a database of cameras all over the world, dumb cameras, video footage. Troll all of YouTube looking for, where does that face appear? The biometric data itself is not even the primary danger. It's the database of data that you could overlay that biometric information on to ask that data questions that could not be asked of it previously at a scale that no human had ever imagined when the technology was developed.
You could also learn things like, say like you're an employer and you're collecting whatever biometric data you can on your employees, and then you find out, oh, this employee has cancer.
Yep.
Right? Maybe they don't even know it.
You've got to use a Ring Fit Adventure or Fitbit. That's collecting a ton of biometrics.
I don't think it's sending it to Nintendo.
No, but it can collect data. And sometimes...
On the SD card in your Switch, Nintendo could collect it. I
guess the most difficult thing is that it's not always obvious what data could be used for something in the future. Like, it's not obvious to a layperson what kind of data is useful or not useful, dangerous or not dangerous.
All of it.
Yep, but like, look at the difference. A photo of your face, extremely useful, extremely dangerous, trivial to obtain, cannot be controlled. But heart rate data could be controlled, but many people give that data away to a bunch of different sites. Like, I give my heart rate data away to Strava. I just use it. Like, Strava has all my heart rate data.
Yeah.
I'm taking a risk there theoretically. I don't plan to use heart rate biometrics anytime soon, but someone else might use it against me. But the real problem is these biometrics can't be changed. They also
might use it for you, right, to help fitness.
Yeah. What if
detect heart disease?
Yeah. What if somehow the government used all this data? They passed a law. They passed all this data, and they privately reached out to the 4 million Americans who have a rare heart condition that was detected by Ring Fit 5 in the year 2040. That would be an objective boon to society. But at the same time,
Apple says they're trying to do, right? Yeah.
Yep. But can we trust mega corporations or our current governments with that power?
That's the same evil Apple we talked about in the first hour of the show. The same evil Apple that did that thing is also trying to solve heart disease.
So I guess, because now I am hungry. We've gone on over an hour.
Okay, good.
If you don't know a lot about biometrics, what I'd actually recommend, read the Wikipedia page we're linking to. It's not long. It's at the right level. Like, I've been skimming it. Like, this is at a level that you would understand.
Are you saying that this whole episode of Geek Nights was you reading Wikipedia? Are you saying that Geek Nights is two guys reading Wikipedia who don't actually know anything?
I mean, I do the live stream. People can usually see what I'm looking at while I'm talking. Sometimes the listener will see me type in the name of a movie.
Change Geek Nights to read Wikipedia Nights. Yeah. We pick a random Wikipedia page and read it out loud to you.
Actually, the Wikipedia goes way deeper than we went. We were mostly talking about...
That might be useful for people who can't see.
Did you see... Here's something to end on. Total aside. Did you see that dude who has been filling the Scots Wikipedia with made-up articles forever?
I read something about. I read that
there's Scots Wikipedia it's supposed to be in the Scots dialect.
I read a headline that said the Scots Wikipedia has mostly been written by a white guy.
So it's supposed to be articles written in the Scots dialect, partly to preserve that dialect and to make it more accessible. Like, there's a lot of reasons why that's a good thing. But most of the articles are written by this like American dude who apparently was just writing articles with a fakey, bullshitty Scots accent.
Like Uncle Scrooge McDuck? Like,
yeah.
Oh, laddie, the biometrics, watch out.
Yep, it's basically like make a fake accent and just write articles in it. And
well, at least they're all written by the same guy with the same account.
Yep, pretty easy to suss that one out. Yep. All right, I think that was a show.
Stop. Savvy.